Hey guys, Matt, IronTrap Garage. Today we are back working on the Mercury. We are in the home stretch for the winter improvements I had planned for the Mercury. We got pretty much all the really difficult work done. Aside from getting the glass made and polishing up, sanding and polishing all those stainless window surrounds I made, all the hard work, so to speak, or difficult work, I think is pretty much, we're past that now. Now I'm going to do a little bit of work on the front end. We have a little bit of body work stuff to do, but we're still a little cold in our region to start doing body work with, you know, the temperatures outside and even in the shop. So what I'm going to work on today in this video is getting the front end smoothed out a little bit. So we're going to work on nosing the car. So nosing the car, essentially, that terminology is smoothing out the front, the hood area of a car. So it can be something that can be done to the extreme, or you can do some light work. So what I'm doing is trying to keep a little bit of the trim on the car. We're not doing like a wild custom on this car where it's just everything's totally smooth and seamless. So what I'm going to do is planning on keeping this upper piece of trim here that runs the whole entire length of the car. I think with the black car, it breaks up all of the black on the side of the car, and it kind of accentuates the line. So we're going to get rid of this lower piece of trim, the Mercury emblem. I'm going to be getting rid of the hood ornament and the hood handle. And then also we're going to work on getting the bumper tucked in, a bunch of that stuff. We're going to probably break it into, like we've been into a few videos. And then of course I have to make a hood latch setup and like slam panels, much like we did on the 38 convertible last summer or last winter, to make it so that it has a remote hood opening. But the goal is, by the end, get a little bit of the clutter taken care of the front end while still keeping a little bit of the trim so it looks factory, so to speak, but not totally original. So I'm going to work on first getting the trim that we don't need off, all that stuff, welding up some holes, and then we can kind of go from there and just start seeing how it looks all cleaned up. All right, so I went ahead and took the Mercury emblems on both sides, this lower piece of trim that went from here to here, and then the hood ornament and handle, took all that off. Steve went and just sprayed some Windex to wipe all the dirt and dust, and then there was a halo from the wax, over the years of wax in the car and whatever in here, and polish. And yeah, I mean, we were just starting to talk before we turned the camera on. It makes the car, the dive, getting rid of all the extra trim.
Yep.
You just see that one piece of trim and it just flows all the way with the roof and everything.
Right. There's nothing else to draw your eye at the front. All you see is high in the front and low in the back.
Yeah.
That
It's way less busy. So the one thing we're trying to decide is, from the beginning, I wanted to keep these two pieces of trim here. And I was struggling with that early on. I'm like, well, there's a little cutout here in the trim for that handle to go. And I was thinking about cutting the handle up and putting the little V8 emblem in there and sinking it in. We're not sure what we want to do with the V8 emblem here, so I may make another piece of trim down there, but that is the thought process. But up in here, there's a bunch of mess we got to clean up from the factory where it's cut and they pinch the hood together. But I think I'm going to step out of the way here. I think I'm going to take this trim off on the bottom here just as a test and see if I like it before we continue. And then making the pieces to fill everything is the kind of the easy part, so to speak. But I think I'm going to pull this trim off. We'll see what that looks like. Just like back in the day, dechroming a custom. This is like a time-honored tradition.
Exactly, yeah. It was just something you did.
Just think of how many times Barris, Winfield,
Right.
all those, Bill Hines, all those guys that brought a car that was in probably this kind of condition, just a used car, and some guy said, I want to make it a custom. De-trim this, do that.
Yeah.
And it's probably kind of nice working on like this thing makes me think of that because the screws all come across nice and, you know.
Right, working on a 10-year-old car
Yeah.
as opposed to a 70-year-old
Yeah,
car.
it's like, yep. And they didn't care about the parts, so they just would probably break those clips I was worried about. They just twist the clips off for the Mercury emblem. And,
Throw it in the dumpster, throw it in the scrap metal dumpster.
yeah, who cares? Who needs any of that crap? So whoever painted it, I guess, was probably at least they disassembled the trim and stuff.
They did a nice job at what they did. You know, maybe what they did probably wasn't great, but they did it nicely.
Yeah, the body work was just, wasn't a 10, it was a 6, 5. But that's by our standards today. Now, let's take that out, and then we're going to step back. All right, so pulled that trim off the front. As far as the side view goes, it really cleans it up even more. I thought I wasn't gonna like it, but what Steve and I were just talking about, and we discussed this before we started, there now is it seems odd, maybe it's just because we're not used to it. There's a gap here that's a little bigger than the bar spacing. So I don't know from the front, do I lower the nose of the hood? It honestly, looking on the camera, it doesn't look, I think we're obsessing because, or not obsessing, we noticed it because we saw it one way the whole time.
Yeah.
And if those holes were filled, it doesn't, move my welder here. Like when I was just looking through the camera lens, it didn't look.
Right, yeah.
Should I move all my junk out of the way?
I don't know, I think that needs to be closed up.
I don't know. I mean, I guess you'd have to close it
Like up to the level of this.
that low.
Yeah, like halfway, that's like halfway.
So just like a pie. So leave this kind of gap here, because it's tighter here than there. So you're
Yeah.
saying make probably a similar gap to what the bars
I
are.
think you need that gap there because it's just going to draw your eye if you have that same
Yeah.
gap all the way from the bottom to right there.
Yeah, and the hood's pretty close to how it needs to sit. So yeah, I don't disagree. Having a gap that's the same as the grill would be ideal. So probably if I cut here along the face of the hood here and brought this edge down, or made a new broken piece, a whole new piece, and just welded it in,
Right.
and then with the hood shut. I think I want to do that after the hood latch is done though.
Oh yeah, yeah. Get your gap where it needs to be first, and then match it.
Yeah, and then, yeah, so I think it's acceptable like this, but it's,
I think it'll look a lot better. With
yeah, closing it up. But just the front end with I wanted to keep these, I kind of like the overriders and stuff. It's a little fancy, and getting rid of all the trim on the hood. Now it's just the bumper, kind of like the back where we have a little busyness in the center of the bumper, but it's just in the front now. So I kind of dig that. But the side view, where you can't see that gap that we're discussing.
The side view is pretty amazing. It looks a lot more menacing.
Yeah.
Chrome strip on it.
So now the chrome on the stainless on the side of the car, and then around the around the windows, focus it on my hand. Around the window opening is more obvious. And I don't hate the door handle. I know a lot of people were asking about what we were going to do with that. I actually like it because it's kind of directional, having the point on it, and it's slanted downhill with the rest of the car.
It's elegant. I like it.
Yeah, I don't really hate that. A lot of people were talking about putting Lincoln buttons on it, but I actually think that shape of the Lincoln buttons is kind of breaks up the lines of the car. Mm-hmm. So I think either no door handle at all or a stock one like that is what it needs. But I think we're going in the right direction here. So what I've decided is we're going to weld up all these holes for the trim. Here is a little more difficult. They just slit the hood right here, and then they folded it over. They pinched it together as it goes down. So this gets pinched more and more and more and more, and it's overlapped probably this far on this side on the inside. So what I'm going to have to do is probably cut that whole strip out and make a new strip, TIG weld it in, and then use the planishing hammer to bring this crown back up. So that's going to be a little difficult, a little tricky, and then of course we'll have to make a patch in there and all over. But I'm going to work on filling all those holes and all that stuff. I have all the hood latch out, so the hood can just open and shut, no problem. And we have a clean slate. I can also get the planishing hammer in there now that I have that bracing out of there. So that's the plan. I'm going to get busy with wrecking this car some more, and then we'll come back after I get everything welded up. All right, so in between visitors and juggling phone calls, I was able to get both sides welded. You can see that the welds are just about totally disappeared. You can see a little tiny halo in the color of the metal, but pretty good. I took some time with the Vixen file, the bullseye pick, a block sander with like 80 grit, got everything pretty good. The other side is definitely better than this side. This side isn't too bad. There's a little wave in the panel here that I was I kind of overworked when I was hammering dialing, so I used the shrinking disc, got the oil can out of it, it's good again, and just de-ate it and left it alone. So everything's really good. I can just put that trim back on, but I took the trim off because I wanted to be able to file all this and get this whole area nice and flat, because now there's not a piece of trim that's hiding all that. And I even found when filing it, there was some low spots that were just in the hood from the factory or when it was repainted. So that's all good. Nose of the hood is what I'm moving on to next. I did this off camera. This is all taped out how I'm thinking of cutting it. So the way they made this hood's pretty interesting. They basically cut the hood, slit it all the way down, and then they like squeezed the hood together somehow. I'm not quite sure how they did it in manufacturing. And then when they squeezed it together, they just spot welded along it. So this goes from just a slit right here, like a cutoff grinder width, and then it starts overlapping. And when it gets down to about like in here, on both sides, the bottom end here, it's overlapping this much. So it's all the way to my tape line, all the way to the tape line basically underneath on the other side. So I think that as I've gotten better at this stuff and gotten more confident, it used to be really scary to cut a huge piece out like this. But if you think about it, all these little holes you have to fill, this spot here, that slit, and this hole, and then that big hole there, all of those are going to weld differently. They're going to warp differently. You're going to have to hammer and dolly and finish them differently because they're just inconsistent. And then you still have this weld all the way down the center. So in the end, I think it's going to be harder to finish that out, and it's right in the center of the hood. So you're going to be doing all this welding and finish work in the center of the hood. I think on this one, it's going to be easier to actually cut this whole strip out, make a new strip. I'm going to try and planish out the strip so that it has the same curvature as this ahead of time, fit it in very nicely so there's almost no gap, as little as possible, and we're just doing 2 weld seams all the way across and then one little one at the top and bottom. So that's my plan. It's a little scary to cut that much, but I think that's going to be the best bet, and it'll be able to finish it out the nicest. So I'm going to throw the over there somewhere I have the brace on. I'm going to throw the hood brace back on before I cut it, just to give it some structure. And then we're just going to start making the piece, and hopefully in a little bit of movie magic, this thing will be looking like the sides of the hood and it'll be all smoothed out. All right, so I got the nose all welded up here, and I didn't get as good of a fit on my patch as I would have liked, so there was some warping that might have been from me not fitting it as good as I should, but it didn't weld terrible. So last couple shots you saw me planishing, and what I was doing is there was some really huge dents in here that happened because you have a corner, sharp corner. We went across and then down, and that heat really focuses in that sharp corner and pulls the metal here. It pulled it over here, and it was pretty scary. So when I was first starting out doing this stuff, and a lot of people I see doing this, you just immediately go to try and hammer on that part that's dented, and really you need to just think about it. And the metal shrunk in here, and it's weak, more weak over here. Metal will warp easier in the flat area versus where all the shape is, so it just pulled that down there. So the more I stretched it on the weld, this dent came out to the point where it's very, very shallow. It's just a little bit of a dent, and I think I can handle that with the hammer and dolly or planishing hammer very lightly. So just working on getting the shape back in. The problem I'm running into is right about here, I can't get the planishing hammer in. Basically, the flange on the hood, it ends up hitting, and then it turns the die on edge, and then it'll start just putting marks in it. So pretty much from here to here, I have to do by hand. And then this front face here, I can put the hammer to the front, and I can get all that pretty easily. So I'm just going to work my way from here down. Probably this little low spot always happens right next to the weld anytime you do this stuff. So I have to use a bullseye pick, try and bring all that up, get all this stuff kind of the same level. The radius is pretty good because I used the correct lower die. Till we get to this area I can't get to, and then I'm going to have to just do a lot of it by hand. But that's what's going on. I keep hammering and dollying and picking and filing, and hopefully we'll get this thing looking pretty good after hours of work. Yes, hours. right, so got a ton of work done on the front end of this car. Get all my chairs out of the way here. So we ended up welding up the whole bottom here. Ran into a little bit of trouble where the hood has a little tweak to it. The gaps weren't good, and even now the gaps for the hood edge to the fender, it's a little tight on this side, and there's a bit of a gap on this side that my OCD is still driving me nuts, but we were actually having a problem since I've had the car. When you put the hood down, it would kind of catch on this side, and then as you pulled that latch in the center down, it would like twist the hood like that. So now that we don't have any of that, we're using a traditional or a more common modern hood latch, so to speak. We're not able to do that. The hood needs to kind of sit right from from when you set it down. So I had to tweak some into the hood, and ended up having, I think something was a little out of shape in here. So I ended up actually putting a piece of threaded rod in and tightening it and pulling it together. And then I actually had to put a little relief cut in this flange, which then warped the metal in the face, and insert about 5 hours of work to get it back to like body filler acceptable. So the nose is pretty much done now. It's all good. We got rid of that lower trim holes and all that stuff. Everything's sitting down pretty good. This part of the hood, when we started, was sitting way up above the fender when you would set it down at rest. Now it's sitting down right like it should. It just needs to be pushed left to right, which I'm hoping when I do the hood latch, I can get that all adjusted so that it just kind of like sits where it needs to. But it's not far off. It's pretty good. So fairly happy with all that. Now we just need to work on the bumper for the last part of this video. So we're going to loosen the bolts on the bumper, and we're going to punch new holes in them and hopefully just slide it in a handful of inches. I'm going to take some measurements and see how far in we can go just to get the nose, everything pushed back and smoothed out, but starting to look pretty good. All right, so I got the front end all cleaned up. And the last shots I showed you when I was talking a little bit, got all the stuff in the front. We ended up actually off camera, I forgot to film it, but we realized that not only was the hood kind of like twisted, the hood was actually shifted off to the side. So it was the gap, I mentioned about the gaps when I was kind of showing around the car. We realized that actually the center of the hood was noticeably over. So what we ended up having to do is disconnect the hood bracket in the back where the two hinging arms are, and we just took a carbide burr and opened up that hole ever so slightly, and that little bit in the back of shifting that over got the hood centered up in the center trim, and it gave us a tighter gap on this side, opened up a little bit of a gap there. Now it's not perfect, but it's way better than it was. And now the hood is actually opening and shutting nicely, and everything's staying relaxed, centered, and not off kilter. So that's important, because when I go to do the, in a future video or the next video, when I go to do the hood latch setup, the remote hood latch, we need the hood to be sitting straight, otherwise it's going to latch crooked, and we don't want that. So we took that little bit of time and did that. And then in the last few shots you saw, took the bumper off. Luckily with the front bumpers on these cars are pretty straightforward. I just measured what I could move everything back, and it basically ended up at 2 inches. I could slide everything forward before the curvature of the bracket starts interfering with the opening in the fender. So after doing that, sliding everything back, leveling it all out, it looks way better. There still is a little bit of a gap, but I don't want something where the bumper is actually like butted up against the fender. So I think it has a nice gap. And pretty much matches the back, and everything is just tightened up overall in the front end now. So when you're staring at the car from the side or a front 3/4 view, you don't have all that trim and busyness in the front. It's kind of just the lines of the car and that single piece of belt line, chrome belt line trim going down the side of the car, which I think looks really good. So honestly, that is the last of the major modifications for this round of improvements on the car. We do need to do, I may show it in the next video, I'm not sure, but I do need to shave the wiper holes in there, which is just something it'll probably take longer to pull the wiper stuff than it will actually the filling the holes. So I got to do that, and then we got to do the hood latch, and then we're going to get into just the getting it back to being a car. So getting our patterns out to the glass shop to get the glass all cut for it. I may be doing that in the background. The interior is being worked on in the background by Rehab Upholstery, and yeah, so a bunch of stuff we got to get done. And then of course it's getting into the warm enough season that we can roll this thing outside and start doing some block sanding and making a mess outside and not in the shop with a little bit of body filler and spraying some dusting in some areas on the car. But we're getting very, very close to being able to get this thing driving and get it outside and moving around. I'm very, very excited because I want to drive this thing. That's the most important part of how we're doing all of this is we could repaint the car and do this full all the way, but the car would be off the road for probably years. So I have enough cars that are already off the road for years. So this one, get all the modifications, improvements done, get the little bit of body work and some paint in my amateur effort, and then just start driving it this year and enjoying it. So thank you guys for following. Let me know what you think of the cleaned up front end on the 39 Mercury. Thanks guys. Catch you later.